Welcome to Home Tiny Lab. My name is Christoph, and in this video tutorial I'm going to speak about the use of Xen Orchestra to back up your virtual machine environment. Here is a small overview of my Homelab. My internet connection is provided by a small box from my internet provider. It's a router, DNS server, DHCP server, the usual stuff that is going on such box. And my Homelab infrastructure is connected through the internet by a connection on a switch. It's a 1 gigabit switch, a very small one, and all my connections are 1 gigabit. So my storage server, that's my TrueNAS core, my virtualization platform XCP-ng for my virtual machines, and here I have my workstation, and that's running Windows 10. Let's go over to Xen Orchestra. What am I using as a reference for this tutorial? I'm using the official documentation of XCP-ng, and they give a small overview of what's possible to use as a backup solution for your infrastructure. My second source is the documentation of Xen Orchestra, and there is also a YouTube video in the form of a webinar that explains more in depth or with more feedback what I'm going to tell. I am only relating to a small infrastructure, so I am going to speak about rolling snapshots, full backups, delta backups, and the metadata backups, and the file level restore. The other things are for bigger infrastructure and multiple XCP-ng hosts in multiple XCP-ng pools. Let's start. The first backup solution offered by Xen Orchestra appliance are the rolling snapshots that you can find here, and I'm going to show this in Xen Orchestra. When you open Xen Orchestra and you're logged in, this is your first page normally. So I have four virtual machines running, and the one that I'm going to use to show our rolling snapshots are done is my Ubuntu base installation. So for instance, on your first page there is already a backup link. You click on this and you click on backup VMs for instance. It will show all the virtual machines that are somewhere in a backup task already used. So you see that all my virtual machines, I'm going to show all my VMs. So not all my VMs are used in a backup task. So here I have now 8 virtual machines. And if I go to my backup VM selection, 6 of the 8 are in a backup task. So here you can have a quick overview of what is already backed or in some kind of backup used. Makes life a little bit more easy if you have to manage a bigger infrastructure. So let's go back to all VMs. And let's go to backup. So everything what's related to backups is done in the backup section in Xen Orchestra. I'm going to overview, and you see that I have already backups scheduled for my own use. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to disable those backup tasks. So now they are all disabled, and I am not going to be bothered with my own backup tasks. If you want to create a backup task, you will have to click on New. And there, immediately you are confronted with backup virtual machines and backup the metadata. In a small infrastructure, this is really important. Like in my case, I only have one XCP-ng host. I have no replication of my metadata to another host in the pool. So if you only have one XCP-ng host, it's best to backup this metadata. I will show that you can always backup this metadata because it doesn't take much space on your storage that you are using for the backup of your virtual machines and your metadata. I would always do a backup of this. But if you only have one XCP-ng host, do this. Okay? But we will speak further more about this backup to do. First of all, backup virtual machines. Clicking on this, and here you have all what you need to make your backup task. I'm going to give this a name. I'm calling this YouTube rolling snapshot. And then you have to select the kind of backup that you want to do. In my case here it's rolling snapshot, and I'm going to enable advanced settings. A proxy, if you're working on a Homelab only on one side, no need to use a proxy. Report, I only report when there's a failure. And then you have to set to which email address you want the report to be sent. I'm not using this in my Homelab, but feel free to try this out. Concurrency. It's the number of snapshots that will be taken at the same time. So if you have a small infrastructure like I am, no need to put a value on this. If you have 40, 50 virtual machines running on a system, it can be a problem to do the snapshots of all those systems at the same time. So I am leaving this blank. The timeout. So after a certain period, if no backup has succeeded of this task, if a timeout appears in 1 hour, it will be considered as a failure. Then the snapshot modes, normal or with memory. I am always using normal. So a snapshot is taken of the running virtual machine at that moment. So you will have to look up if your virtual machine needs to have the memory also, yes or no. If you have a virtual machine with a lot of transactions that are done in memory, perhaps it's a safe bet to also use with memory. It will take more time up and it will use more disk space. But losing or have a corrupted database is more troublesome than losing space on a storage server or on your local disk. Then you have to select the virtual machines to backup. Once you have done this, and again I'm going in smart mode here. You could simply say virtual machine status all, and then you will have all your virtual machines that are running on your infrastructure selected to backup. In my case it were 8 virtual machines. I have some virtual machine tags present. If I select for instance backup, you will see that there are only 6 virtual machine matching like I showed before. But for this video tutorial I'm going to create my own virtual machine tag. So let's create a YouTube backup tag. And there are no matching VMs found because no virtual machine has a matching tag. So with this task, if I click on create, no backup will be done. So sample matching VMs is 0. Now I am going to set a schedule. The name is YouTube rolling snapshots. Snapshot retention, if you leave this to 1, you will only have one snapshot that is stored on your local storage for each virtual machine that is tasked in the rolling snapshot. I am, for this example, set this to 3. I'm going to do this every month, every day, every hour, not every hour, every 3 hours, for example. And when you look a little bit further down, you will see an example when those tasks will have place or will take place. Let's click on OK. If this is enabled, then the task will be created and automatically the schedule will be active. You can set this to disable, then the task will be created but will never be executed. I will set this to enable to show it. Let's click on create. And now YouTube rolling snapshot task is created and is enabled. So every 3 hours a snapshot will be taken. If there were virtual machine matching the criteria of the task. Let's go to virtual machines and let's select our base installation and add a tag. YouTube backup, if I'm not mistaken, was the tag. If I click here on backup, you will see that the YouTube rolling snapshot is added to this virtual machine. So if you are going to overview and we select this icon, we will see the virtual machines that are used in this rolling snapshot task. And we see that our base installation is now in the task of the rolling snapshot. So if, for instance, we want a second machine in this task, let's go back to virtual machines and let's select for my file, and I will add also YouTube backup. I will have 2 systems in this task. So here you have it. Okay, let's go back to the tasks, the backup tasks. With this button you can force the task to be executed. So I'm not going to wait every 3 hours to show you that the backup is taking place. So I'm going to disable this and I'm going to force a snapshot to be taken of the 2 virtual machines. I've clicked on force the job to run, and this job will back up 2 virtual machines. Clicking on OK. And let's watch the task to finish. YouTube rolling snapshots is started. If we click on this button, we'll have an overview of what he is doing, and the 2 snapshots are done. So the job was successful. If we go back to our virtual machines and we look at snapshots, I'm always using the base installation of Ubuntu as my reference. you'll see that there is a snapshot created, YouTube rolling snapshot. I have one snapshot created, and this is the one of my own backups that I'm normally taking. So let's go back to overview, and I'm going to force several snapshots. So I have one snapshot taken, now the second snapshot, and there will be a second task added. So this is done. So it started and it was successful. Let's do a third one. So a third one is done. So if I'm going back to my virtual machine, Ubuntu base installation, and to snapshots, I see that there are now 3 tasks or 3 snapshots from the task YouTube rolling snapshot. Okay. So I'm going back to my overview, and I'm going to force a 4th time a rolling snapshot task. It is started and successful. Let's go back to the virtual machine that I'm using as a reference. And I have still 3 snapshots, but the oldest one was deleted and replaced by the newest one. Because remember, the retention of the snapshots task was 3 snapshots to keep. And these are the backup tasks that are corresponding. And here you can see what's represented in the task. If I'm going to see my Pi-hole server, the same is happening there. 3 snapshots are kept from my rolling snapshot. One important thing, I'm going to show where the snapshots are kept. If I go to storage and I'm going to my local storage SSD and going to disks, I see that on my local storage there is only my Xen Orchestra appliance and my Pop! OS workstation. And you see that also the snapshot for the backup, my backup task that I'm using in my Homelab, is also on that local storage. If I go to my other storage, my mechanical drive, and I go to disks, there you see that my YouTube rolling snapshots are also on that local storage. So keep in mind that you don't have really a backup to fall back on when your disk is corrupted, but when you are corrupting your virtual machine, you have a snapshot where you can quickly fall back on if you do rolling snapshot. So this was my overview of rolling snapshots. Now for all the other backups that are provided with the Xen Orchestra appliance, the ones that I'm going to talk about, like full backups, delta backups, metadata backups, and file level restore, you need external storage. I am using TrueNAS Core as my external storage, and on the other side you have to define that storage in Xen Orchestra so that your backup tasks can use it. So first of all, let's have a look at where my storage is defined on my TrueNAS Core server. You'll have to log in, password, and we are logged in. Now, where do we define our storage? There is a storage button. We go to pools, and I have created a dataset where I am using an NFS share on. And that is where I put all my backups done with Xen Orchestra if they need an external store. So if I go to sharing and I go to NFS shares, you will see that there is one share defined on the NFS XCP backup dataset. I am going to look. You can see how it's defined. The advanced options. And you see that there is only one virtual machine that can access the NFS share, and that's the Xen Orchestra appliance virtual machine. Let's click on cancel here. You can also use a normal Windows workstation because it also works with SMB share. And let's have a look now to this in Xen Orchestra. So if we go to settings, there is a section remotes. And here you see the remote that I have defined to make my backups on. I've called the remote backup and it's on that server, my TrueNAS server, default port, and then you have to enter the path to the dataset to make the connection. So have a look at the types that we can create. So to create a new file system to backup to, this is the section where you do this. And you can choose NFS. What I'm using in my case, you can choose an SMB or also a local drive dedicated to take backups to. Now to make restore and make your backups more bulletproof, it's best to do it on an external storage server. Here you can give the name when you have selected the type of filing system, and that's the name here. So here I have entered backup. No proxy. The host was this IP address, the port default, and then here the path that you have to enter from your definition that you've made, in my case on my TrueNAS core server. Here you can check if your remote is working properly. If you click on this, it will send test passed for backup. You can edit here and you can delete it. Once you have your external storage defined, you can now create your full backups, your Delta backup. The next backup where we are going to speak about is the full backups. You can find here in the Xen Orchestra documentation. And let's go to the Xen Orchestra appliance. Now we have to create a new task. We have again our backup virtual machines. And let's name our new task. Let's call it YouTube full backup. And let's select what's corresponding with this, and that's backup. And here we have immediately the target remotes to define. So if I select it, you see NFS share is defined and a remote called backup. I'm going to selection. If you want to begin from scratch again, you could delete first what's on that remote. Not my case, I want to keep my backups. Here I am going to select advanced settings again. Proxy, same as for the other tasks. Again, reporting on failure. Concurrency, I'm not going to enter a value there. Again, Here, if you have a lot of machines to back up, best is to put a number in there. It will depend on what your bandwidth on your network is and what the throughput is to your local storage. Timeout, default value, compression disabled. On my TrueNOS core dataset, there is already compression taking place. Here you can select if the system has to take a snapshot or not. And if you select this offline backup, it will not take a snapshot, but will export the virtual machine disk and take the server offline to do this. Using snapshots, system will stay online and the snapshot will be exported. But it will always be a complete snapshot for each backup that you will do with a full backup. Snapshot mode, normal, memory or offline. So you can take also your snapshots offline, like in rolling snapshots. So once he will take a snapshot, he will take the system offline, make the snapshot and bring the system again online. I am always using normal mode, never add an issue with it for the moment. Offline backup, very important. If you don't have any space or not enough space on your local system, when you do an offline backup, there's no need to create a snapshot. It can export immediately the virtual machine. So it has its use cases. Everything is default for the moment. Virtual machine to backup, again, the same as for the rolling backup. Same criteria to enter. And here I am going to select YouTube backup. So the same two systems will appear in the matching virtual machines for this full backup task. I'm going to set a schedule as an example. I will name it YouTube full backup. And I will retain on my remote storage. For instance, if I want to keep one full backup for every day for a week, I will set this to 7. If I want a full backup for a month every day, I will set this to 31. And so you can define how much full backups you will take. If you want a full backup every month, for example, 12 backups every month, and every, let's take here 27th, every 27th of the month, full backup will take place and be kept on your remote storage. You can do this at 11 o'clock. And let's set this to 11:30 for example. And if you look at the representation when the tasks will take place, 27th April, 27th May, 27th June, 27th July. And when you are 12 months further, it will replace first month when he's doing his 13th full backup. So this is an example of a monthly full backup. Let's click on OK. I'm going to disable the schedule. I'm not going to use this. We will create the task. And here now we have a YouTube full backup task created with 2 virtual machines that will have a full backup. Go back again to task overview, and I'm going to force a backup, a full backup of my 2 machines. So my Ubuntu base system and my Pi-hole virtual machine. Start. Shop will backup 2 virtual machines. They will stay online because first there's a snapshot that will be taken. Go to tasks, started. And here we see a snapshot is taken for the file. I'm still doing a snapshot for the base Ubuntu installation. 2 snapshots are taken, and now the transfer can begin for the 2 virtual machines to my true NAS dataset. Click on OK. And I will keep running this job now for the moment. So if I'm going to look now at virtual machines, click on Ubuntu, base system, snapshots, there will be a snapshot corresponding with the YouTube full backup task. And that will also be the case for my file. Every time when the job is executed, there will be a new snapshot to make a full backup of the virtual. We look at tasks. Here we can see the progress of the export to the NAS core dataset. And it will take this amount of time. Why this amount of time? Because it's a complete transfer of the virtual machine. Okay. Go to backup overview again. And I will let finish this task. And then I will be back to show the definition of the task for a Delta backup. The next backup in the line is the Delta backups. This is one of my favorites and the one that I use the most often on a regular basis. And let's look at how we can create that task. Let's go to Xen Orchestra appliance again, and you see that my full backup tasks have finished. So if we go to overview, we will see YouTube full backup, 21 minutes, and successfully finished. So let's create a new task. And again, backup virtual machine. And let's make here a title, YouTube Delta backup. Let's select Delta backup. And again, select our destination for the backup, our backup remote. Let's go again to advanced settings, no proxy, report on failure, concurrency. Again, for small systems, no need to define a number there. Timeout in an hour, and then the full backup interval. Here you are going to define after how many Delta backups, full backup interval. Here you are going to define after how many incremental backups of full backup is going to take place again. For example, if I say every 20 backups, do a full backup again, so the 21st or the 21st backup will be a full backup. And then the next 19 will then be again incrementals. For snapshot mode, the same choices to make. Again, going for normal. And here, smart mode, again selecting which virtual machines we want to backup. Again, YouTube backup. And I will have again my 2 machines that match the criteria, so that I have the tag matching. And then let's set a shuttle name. For example, and this is going to be YouTube Delta backup. And retention, here I am going to set it to 60. Why 60? So I have 3 full backups that are made, and I have the corresponding incremental backups that go with it. You could also force a full backup for the first time. Let's say that I'm doing this every day at 10 o'clock. And here you have a schedule for the next 5 ones. Let's click on OK. I'm going to disable the schedule because I'm going to force to do a backup. And let's create. So my YouTube Delta backup task is created and my full backup interval is 20. So let's click on executing a backup for those 2 virtual machines. And a task will soon start. So this happens. And if I go to started, snapshots are taken. And then the transfer will take place. So snapshots are done. So if I'm going to look now at my virtual machine, my Ubuntu base system, and 2 snapshots, here I have now a YouTube Delta backup. Keep in mind to never delete those snapshots if you have jobs corresponding with those snapshots, because otherwise you will mess your backup jobs up. So keep in mind those snapshots are very important for your backup mechanism. So everything with exo backup, do not touch this if you're not certain they are not matching or matching a backup job. So the job started and he is beginning with a full backup because it's his first backup in his queue of in his interval 20 backups. So let's finish this task and afterwards we're going to see that a second course of this Delta backup will be much faster. So the first Delta backup in the series is almost done. Few seconds to go. And so those tasks are done. Let's go to backup overview. And here we see that it was successful. So YouTube Delta backup took 21 minutes and it transferred over 30 gigabytes. So let's force a second Delta backup, and now it's going to be an incremental. So let's click on run the backup job once. Task will be generated. So here it is started. Snapshot done. And already finished with one export. And the job is already done. So this took a few seconds and transferred only 72 megabytes. So the more often that you do a Delta backup, smaller it will be. Will keep the amount of data to transfer really small. So keep in mind that with Delta backups you have something that has will put less stress on your system and on your network. Let's repeat what's very important here. If I'm going to virtual machines, I'll select my Ubuntu base system and snapshots. Here you will see that you have still a Delta backup snapshot 1 that is present. So never delete this one, and for the other jobs either. They are all important. So this was what I had to say for Delta backups. So the next thing in the list where I'm going to speak about is the file level restore. I'm going to backup And there you have a section completely separate, file restore. I'm going to click on this. And then you have a list of systems or backups that have already been done. So for example, if I take my Ubuntu base installation and I click here on restore, select backup, I'm going to take one of the Delta backups. It's important that you take Delta backups to do file restoration. Then I select a disk, selecting a partition, the biggest one, that's where your files are. And here you see a triangle. This means that you cannot select files to restore. So with a base installation of Ubuntu, with a logical volume manager, you cannot restore files. For example, if I take my OS workstation, I select one of the latest backups, OS workstation, and the Linux partition of 16 gigabytes. Here I can select files. So if I go to the home directory, select my home directory, and I go to pictures. There are no pictures in it. So let's select something else. Perhaps in documents there is something. Oh, nothing in documents. Not a very good example, but okay, let's continue. I will find something. In downloads there is always something in. Okay. The Home Tiny Lab draw.io file. Deselected. And here you see, this I'm not going to transfer. So I've selected one file. If you click on OK, it will be downloaded through your browser in the download file. And it will be in a zip. So it will be archived. So this is a way to restore files, but you have the need on your virtual machine to have a file system that is supported. So ext4, for example, is supported. So this is what I had to tell about a file restoration. Another backup that we have to see, another task, if I do new, for example, the metadata. I'm going to click on this and here I will name it YouTube metadata. You can select two things in one job. The pool metadata, that's the metadata of your XCP-ng host. In my case, I have only one, so it's a good idea to pack this up. And then the XO config, so the config of your Xen Orchestra appliance. So in case that you had to restore your virtual machine or to recreate a virtual machine to reinstall Xen Orchestra, you can import those config files. The target where you have to write it to. Here again, proxy report in case of failure. Select the pools. Okay, I'm going to select my XCP-ng host pool, and then I'm going to schedule this. Name YouTube metadata. Pool retention. So let's say that I will keep 4 versions. XO retention the same. Makes it easier. And let's say that I do this every month. And I will do this only once a week. And I will do this at 6 in the evening. Okay, here I have to set again 4. And here you will see the jobs how they are scheduled. And let's click on OK. Here the job is disabled. I will keep it like this. And then create the job. If I'm going to my YouTube selection of backup rules or backup tasks, you see here the YouTube metadata. I will click on this, force a backup. This job will backup 0 VMs. There are no VMs. The XCP-ng host and the Xen Orchestra appliance config data that is backupped. There will be a task generated. And it took only a few seconds. And why does it go so fast? Because it's not taking much space either on your external storage. If you want to do a restoration of one of your virtual machines, I'm going to take the base installation. So I'm going to click on backup and restore. And one of the latest backups here is this one. I'm going to click on restore, select your backup, the latest Delta backup, select the place where you want the virtual machine to be restored to. I'm going to take my mechanical hard disk. Here you can select if you want to start the virtual machine after restore and to generate a new MAC address. Very important. I have already a system running like this. If I'm doing a restore on the same network, be aware that you have to allocate an IP address dynamically, otherwise you will have conflict in IP address, and to generate a new MAC address. Otherwise you will have some side effects if two systems with same MAC address, same IP address are running on your same network. Okay? And a restore will take place now. So we will have a restore task. Now let's click on tasks. And here you will see that the transfer from my external storage on my TrueNAS core is done through my local storage on my XCP-ng host. And it will take a few minutes to be imported. So this is how you can bring back your virtual machines. In the case that you have a complete loss of your XCP-ng host, you will have to reinstall an XCP-ng host to recreate your virtual machine for your Xen Orchestra appliance. You could bring back the ISO config if you want to, or otherwise you have to do a manual remote definition and then go to backup. You will reread the remote and you will have your all your tasks or your old or your previous backups that you have done listed again, and you can restore from there on again. What's next on the list and very important? For instance, I'm going to show what you can do with your backed up virtual machines. They are now on the TrueNAS core server. And I'm going to show how it looks on your TrueNAS core server. So I'm going to log in on the TrueNAS core server. And this is done, and your volumes are in the mount directory. The volume or the pool is volume 0. And remember, my dataset was NFS XCP backup. And here you see the structure where your backups are put in. You can copy those files to another system or on an external hard disk. You can replicate them to another TunaS core server. If you do it like this, you can have multiple copies of your original backup on different systems and on different locations. So if you look at the space that it takes, so disk usage 1 level down and human readable, you see the backup of my virtual machines takes about 300 gigabytes, and the other configs are really small. So there is no reason not to back up your exoconfig backups and your exopool metadata backup. So this is what you can do further on with the backups done with Xen Orchestra. So let's go again to Xen Orchestra appliance, and it has finished restoring the system. So if I go to my virtual machines, I have a second Ubuntu base system that is running. It's probably still starting up. Let's have a look. It's still starting up. So and it sets the tag restored from backup on that restored virtual machine. So you can always find back restored systems if you leave that tag on those virtual machines. And there is a timestamp number after the name. So back to overview. Here we had a small overview on how you can back up your virtual machine infrastructure in your Homelab if you want to. So Xen Orchestra appliance gives you all the tools, and the only thing that you need is an external storage device where you can set a share on like NFS. I hope this was helpful, and don't hesitate to back up your Homelab, because one day it will be useful and you will not spend a time at recreating everything that you have done. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.